An internal government document reveals contradictions in what China's Communist Party members can do and what's laid out in the Constitution. A Chinese firm announcing it will punish employees who buy American-made cars or Apple iPhones instead of China-made, but some are pointing out the hypocrisy. Beijing unveiling plans to create a new free trade hub on one of its islands to replace Hong Kong. The detailed blueprint comes after Trump revoked Hong Kong's special status 2 weeks ago. A new Harvard research suggests the virus could have hit Wuhan much earlier than we thought. Satellite images show a spike in traffic around that city's hospitals as early as August last year. And a Chinese propaganda outlet paid millions of dollars to American news outlets to run ads that look like news reports. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. As a member of the Chinese Communist Party, what aren't you allowed to do? An internal document from May 20th shows the party is trying to control every word and thought of its citizens. The document listed 20 restrictions for Communist Party members and demands that they carefully control their words and actions even outside of working hours. Any violation of the rules will result in severe punishment. Some of the restrictions are related to consuming media. The document forbids party members from visiting illegal or reactionary websites. According to China, that includes Twitter and YouTube. All English mainstream media also aren't accessible. That's unless you get special permission from authorities, like China's 50-cent army, who are assigned to spread CCP propaganda on Twitter, or certain officials tasked with carrying out the so-called wolf warrior policy against the Western world. Another rule bans tuning into overseas reactionary radio and TV programs. For decades, these signals from BBC and Voice of America have been disrupted by the CCP. No American TV programs reach normal Chinese households either. Only by using special softwares can Chinese netizens bypass the regime's firewall and catch a glimpse into the outside world. The rule also imposes regulations on private life. Party members aren't allowed to join local clubs, alumni groups, classmates associations, or veteran associations that are not run by the party. The Communist Party fears any form of social gathering outside of its control because people could secretly denounce the party. Speaking critically about the party's principles or policies, even privately, is also forbidden. Going even further, the party bans practicing or believing in religions as well. In China, there are two kinds of churches. One is organized and recognized by the party. Even its bishops are appointed by the party, not by the Pope. The other one is the underground church, which doesn't follow the party and is strongly suppressed by the regime. The same is true for Buddhism. Uyghur Muslims, Buddhists, and practitioners of spiritual meditation discipline Falun Gong are severely persecuted in China. Now let's compare the rules with China's constitution. Article 35 claims Chinese citizens enjoy freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly, of association, of procession, and of demonstration. Article 36 says Chinese people have freedom of religion. It adds that no state organ, social organization, or individual is allowed to compel citizens to control others' choice of faith. That leaves the question, does the internal document violate the Chinese constitution? Beijing's so-called national security law in Hong Kong is highly controversial and widely thought to erode the city's freedom. The Communist Party denies it. Yet the words of Zhang Xiaoping, deputy director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, tells another story. This office belongs to China's State Council. Zhang said on Monday that the negative reports published by Hong Kong media about the regime are to overthrow state power and subvert the leadership of the CCP. That means when the new law takes effect, the negative reports will be considered criminal and subject to punishment just like in mainland China. One netizen wrote, "Freedom of the press in a communist party is so terrible. You can only glorify the greatness and correctness of the party." Another user, referring to democratic governments, wrote, "Any political party in this world can be subverted. Every 4 years, Americans consider whether to subvert the rule of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party." New documents filed with the U.S. Department of Justice reveal a Chinese propaganda outlet paid the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal millions of dollars to run propaganda ads that look like news reports. According to the documents, China Daily has paid over $4.5 million to the Post and nearly $6 million to the Journal since November 2016. China Daily is overseen by the Chinese regime's publicity department, which controls the spread of propaganda. It has a history of spending millions to run propaganda articles called China Watch in major U.S. newspapers, including the Journal, the New York Times, and the Post. One Chinese company has announced that it will punish employees for buying Apple iPhones or American-made cars. If caught, employees won't receive their 6-month work bonuses. The money will instead be given to employees using Chinese tech giant Huawei phones and cars manufactured in China. Back in May, another Chinese company introduced a similar policy. In their announcement, they even used words like rascal and nasty to describe the U.S.'s dealings with Huawei. The announcement quickly backfired, drawing backlash and criticism. One person even mentioned the U.S. technology that has been used to make Huawei devices. They asked, should we count the made in U.S. parts inside Huawei phones? A new study from Harvard suggests the virus could have hit Wuhan much earlier than we thought. Satellite images show a spike in traffic around that city's hospitals as early as August last year.
New research from Harvard may suggest the virus outbreak occurred much earlier in Wuhan than Chinese authorities reported. The analysis comes from Harvard Medical School, which analyzed satellite imagery of hospital parking lots in Wuhan. The images show an obvious surge of hospital traffic since August of last year. The Chinese regime reported the first case of the virus on December 31st. In one case, researchers found that there were 171 cars parked outside Wuhan's Tianyou Hospital, one of the largest in the city, back in October 2018. But during the same time frame in 2019, 285 vehicles were found. The surge coincided with a spike in online searches for terms like cough and diarrhea, which are both symptoms of the virus. The research says the spike was neither seen in previous flu seasons nor mirrored in the cough search data. The study has not yet been peer-reviewed by other scientists. The study's lead researcher told ABC News that they can't conclude the spike was caused by the outbreak, but when they looked at other external factors that could cause it, like mass gathering and natural disasters, they couldn't identify any other reason for the surge. The only mass gathering that happened in the city around that time was the Military World Games, but researchers say the data they analyzed was taken before the games began. China's foreign ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying called the study incredibly ridiculous when asked about it at a press briefing. Chinese authorities have insisted that they reported the outbreak to the public and the World Health Organization in a timely manner. According to an NBC report, an analysis shows that from October 7th to the 24th of last year, there was no cell phone activity around the high-security area of Wuhan's P4 lab. That data suggests there may have been a hazardous event there sometime in early October that required the lab to close down. The report also talks about the images from October 14th to the 19th last year that show no outbound traffic from the lab.
Today marks 1 year since nearly 2 million protesters marched in Hong Kong, demonstrating against a bill that would allow China to extradite fugitives from the city. And it didn't stop there, but is evolving into a long-term pro-democracy movement.
Dozens attended a peaceful lunchtime rally in the Central Financial District Tuesday, marking 1 year since a massive rally that sparked months of pro-democracy protests. A bittersweet milestone, supporters of the movement say their feelings on the anniversary range from hope to fear.
We feel that our freedom is being ignored, and we can't stand out to fight. Even we have no right to assemble. So we're feeling helpless.
Last year, about 2 million people hit the streets in a city of 7.5 million against the proposed legislation to allow people to be extradited to mainland China, where the courts are controlled by the Communist Party. 1 month later, Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam suspended the bill, but she stopped short of a formal withdrawal.
Free Hong Kong! Free Hong Kong!
It would take nearly 2 more months and many more protests before it was formally withdrawn in September of 2019. Now, authorities in Beijing are about to impose a so-called national security law, which activists fear will further curb freedoms. And protesters aren't giving up hope.
We'll try to use our
to continue our fight.
This high school student says his dream is for the Chinese Communist Party to let go and let Hong Kong be free again. Almost 9,000 people, as young as 11 all the way up to 84 years old, were arrested in relation to the protests over the past year. More than 600 have been charged with rioting.
Beijing is unveiling plans to create a new free trade hub in one of its islands to replace Hong Kong. The detailed blueprint comes after Trump revoked Hong Kong's special status 2 weeks ago.
Beijing is attempting to replace Hong Kong with Hainan as the new magnet for foreign investment. The tropical island is about a 1.5-hour flight from Hong Kong, yet experts say that's unlikely to happen if Hainan lacks the features that made Hong Kong an attractive place to do business. The most important feature is the free flow of capital and currency exchange. Under Hong Kong's former special status, the US dollar could be converted into the Hong Kong dollar, while Chinese yuan cannot.
The fact that I can withdraw the money I invested at any time is a condition that must be met for any capital investment.
The second factor is transparency and the free flow of information. Hong Kong has freedom of speech without content censorship. It also protects data privacy. While in mainland China, the Great Firewall blocks Google and Gmail, tools many businesses rely on.
Information is changing rapidly in a highly developed financial environment. The difference of a few seconds can lead to significant gains and losses.
Under the one country, two systems policy, Hong Kong operates under its own laws, similar to the British. This is a common trait for major present-day global financial centers. But the administration in Hainan follows the same legal system implemented by mainland China.
Let's not talk about whether the mainland's legal system can be trusted with transparency and justice. Just the legal structure alone does not match the Anglo-American system.
Tong says the free flow of information, capital, and a matching legal system are conditions for any global business hub, yet none of these can be found in mainland China.
So in such a situation, you say you want to turn Hainan into a free trade port to replace Hong Kong? I think it's a joke.
The World Bank ranks Hong Kong the world's third easiest place to do business, while Hainan and mainland China as a whole is ranked 31st. This suggests the chances of Hainan becoming the next Hong Kong are very slim.
The value of China's currency is sinking. Trade has also taken a hit, with both exports and imports down for May. It's the latest sign of China's economic troubles amid the pandemic.
The Chinese yuan is falling fast compared to a basket of other currencies, dropping for a record 16 days straight, the longest run since the basket was created 5 years ago. It's fallen 4% against the euro and the Australian dollar. The yuan has also been falling against the US dollar. In late May, rising tensions with the US contributed to the yuan falling to near its lowest level since 2008's financial crisis. And factors like the Hong Kong protests and the US-China trade deal could send the American dollar soaring again, pushing the yuan even lower. If it continues falling, it'll put major strain on the country's entire economy. Chinese international trade is also weakening. In May, exports fell about 3% and imports plummeted almost 17% compared to last year. It's the biggest drop in 4 years. A large portion of China's workforce are in the export industry, but during the pandemic, international orders have dried up. Official data shows profits at China's industrial firms fell almost 30% between January and April.
It's another day in a series of protests set off after George Floyd's death. Officials across the nation are advising protesters to get tested for the CCP virus if they've put themselves at risk. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on that.
This week, LA's health director told protesters to get tested for the CCP virus and self-quarantine if they've been exposed to large crowds and were around people without masks. New York State is asking all protesters to get tested regardless of their level of exposure.
Again, I'm asking all the protesters to please get tests. That is a new question that has been dropped into the mix. We had all these at-home measures, and then we had thousands of people show up for protests.
Cuomo says he doesn't know whether the protests will affect the spread of the virus, but the CDC has reported so-called super spreader events during the pandemic where one person affects many more. In one incident, one person is suspected to have infected 32 others during choir practice. Senior scholar Amish Adalja from Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security says the recent protests present a significant risk of spreading the virus.
There's a substantial risk of transmitting or acquiring COVID-19 in these protests. These are mass gathering events where people cannot necessarily social distance that well. They are often shouting, screaming, and chanting, which generates droplets, which may then transmit the virus. They are also being sprayed with pepper spray as well as tear gas, which induces coughing. There are many factors that lead to the belief that these protests are going to start waves of transmission.
The World Health Organization also urged protesters to keep at least 1 meter apart and wear a mask if they're around other people. But Adalja says the masks don't make up for the lack of social distancing.
Hopefully, we've taken the time since March to develop the ability to diagnose these cases rapidly, to isolate them, to contact trace, so that we can keep the number of cases that result from these protests bubbling over and putting our hospitals into stress.
While Governor Cuomo is asking all protesters to get a test, Adalja says he only recommends it to people who weren't able to social distance and were around people who were coughing. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Strong warnings from the Federal Trade Commission continue, aimed at companies that they say are making groundless claims about treatments for the CCP virus.
The Federal Trade Commission has sent out at least 35 more letters warning marketers nationwide to stop making unsubstantiated claims that their products and therapies can treat or prevent COVID-19. The Commission advises those who get the letter to immediately stop making all claims that their products can treat or cure COVID-19 and to notify the FTC within 48 hours about the specific ways they're addressing the agency's concerns. The letters go on to say that if the false claims don't stop, the Commission may seek a federal court injunction and an order requiring refunds to consumers.
Egyptians are turning to honey for a sign of relief amid the pandemic. They say it can bring many benefits and even treat illnesses.
Business is buzzing for Egyptian honeymakers. They say the CCP virus has boosted demand for the golden liquid. Egyptians have been making honey since ancient times. Some even believe the sweet nectar can treat illnesses.
This is due to the culture of the society that considers honey an immune booster.
Bahari says honeymakers also supply pharmaceutical companies. Honey is found in many different types of drugs,
especially for liver treatment, vitamins, supplements, and immune boosters. We also have a bee product called propolis.
Right now, there's no evidence that honey helps prevent or treat the coronavirus, but the pandemic is still driving sales up in Egypt.
These days especially, one should consume more of it because of the dark times we are living in, the coronavirus pandemic.
Egypt produces close to 10 different types of honey. It's widely praised for health and beauty benefits.
It's an encouraging week for New York City businesses. Phase 1 of reopening started yesterday. Here's a look at how businesses are adapting to new rules and how they feel about finally getting back to work.
New York City is gradually reopening this week after 3 months on lockdown. Phase 1 started Monday. Stores previously deemed non-essential are now cleared to reopen for delivery and pickup, but customers still can't browse inside. For employees at high-end clothing store Paul Stewart, it means adapting to a virtual experience.
Reopening means that we are opening the boundaries that have been set between us and our customer now. And we are, us, the employees, able to get in here and start connecting with our customers wherever they are, but not in these four walls.
The shop is now offering virtual tours of the store. Employees help customers pick clothes through video calls.
We're used to having quite a heavy foot traffic. It's kind of opened up the opportunity for us to expand in our business and really kind of reach out in sort of a digital way.
The vice president said he's glad to be back.
Are you kidding me, man? This is the best feeling in the world. We've been looking forward to this for so long.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, we're back to doing some business. That's what we're here to do.
Another business reopening this week is Royal Collectibles in Queens. The manager says it feels great to get back to work again.
It feels great to be back at work again. You know, we as Americans, as a self-business, small business, we need to work and we have to work. That's just in our blood.
Employees have to rearrange the store's layout to accommodate the new rules, but the manager says working will take their minds off the virus.
We were in jail for the last, 2 months, 3 months. It's been a relief, not just for the mind, but, financially and everything.
One florist near Columbus Circle is also excited to reopen.
We can finally make sure we put a sign on the window that we are open.
He says customers can still order flowers and get them delivered, but now they can also walk into the store, although there's limited space. Despite the good reopening news, he says he's worried about the future of his business.
Main business we have is with offices and restaurants, and until those are going to be fully opened, I don't know if we can go back to normal numbers. We gotta have just to take it one day at a time and just work and progress the way it comes.
New York City was the U.S. city hit hardest by the virus.
As the country reopens, small businesses in America are becoming increasingly optimistic about their business outlook. An index measuring small business owners' confidence about their future increased to 94.4 in May, a strong improvement from April's reading. Owners surveyed by the Small Business Association, NFIB, also expect the recession to be short-lived. One of the hardest hit sectors by the pandemic, the global airline industry, could lose a record of $84 billion this year as 2020 goes down as the worst year in the history of aviation. The head of the International Air Transport Association says if there's no second wave, the worst is behind us, but if there is, he hopes the government will take different measures. Macy's is reopening stores across the U.S. to better than expected sales reports. Despite the positive sign, though, the retailer says business will take over a year to return to normal. According to its interim CFO, Macy's had considered all stores for potential closures to cut costs. In a Monday filing, Wendy's says beef supply is almost back to normal. The restaurant chain faced beef shortages last month as the CCP virus temporarily shut down some meat factories. One analyst estimated that nearly 1 out of 5 Wendy's was out of beef last month.
Google is adding features on its Maps service to alert users about virus-related travel restrictions. They say it will help users plan their trips better.
As big cities around the United States like New York reopen, more people are heading back to work and getting back on public transport. But who wants to step on a packed train in a time of social distancing? To that end, Google on Monday introduced new features in Google Maps that will allow users to check crowd sizes at train stations before heading out. An update to Google Maps will also allow transit riders to check if buses are running on full or limited schedules. The transit alerts will be rolled out in the U.S., United Kingdom, Argentina, France, India, and several other countries, according to a company blog post. And the new features won't be limited to public transport. Google Maps will also provide details on highway bottlenecks and travel restrictions due to health checks at national border crossings between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
With months-long closures of restaurants around the world, it's not only restaurant owners that fear for their business. Spanish tuna fishermen are worried about the decline in export sales.
Thousands of huge and fatty bluefin tuna pass through the Strait of Gibraltar during their spawning season, and the fishermen are keen to catch some with the trap fishing method named almadraba, an ancient fishing technique which has barely changed in more than 3,000 years. But this year the virus added a new layer of equipment to the fishermen.
They brought us masks, they told us the guidelines to follow during the almadraba to try to maintain 2 meters of distance and all that.
In the Cadiz region of Spain, around 50% of the tuna caught would normally be exported to Japan, but the closure of restaurants and bars there means demand has dropped.
We have been very affected by the state of alarm because it has caused an absolute stop in the trade with bars, restaurants, etc., which are our main clients. A lot of uncertainty has been generated because there has been a lot of regulatory change.
With global travel plummeting and no tourists in town to eat fish locally, sellers are trying to find new markets. Companies like Productos de Almadraba has found one way to tackle the surplus. They are freezing tuna at ultra-low temperatures of -60 degrees Celsius to preserve it for a longer period of time. Lockdown restrictions have begun to ease, but people are still not allowed to travel around the country. While the world's virus restrictions remain in place, Cadiz's tuna industry can't net the profits it was accustomed to.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest updates, and see you next time.